a series of events. Tonight we have one at Busboys and Poets in Brookland. On October 10th, we're doing one at the Busboys at 4th and K. It's going to be a 45-minute documentary on trafficking in DC, featuring accounts from people, survivors, as well as like DC Rape Crisis Center, Men Can Stop Rape, Amara, Fair Girls, Safe Shores, a lot of the groups that are working with children and working on issues of child sex trafficking. It shouldn't be a surprise that we're talking about disproportionately Black and brown youth, disproportionately girls, and gender nonconforming youth, many of them directly from foster care. But it's a huge problem. I mean, I will tell you again, 100% of the girls that we work with are found in these makeshift brothels, so it's going to definitely be a problem. A bunch of the survivors who testified to us basically said that they heard about this legislation from their traffickers, they were excited about it, and that's how they approached us, asking about the legislation. We were able to pen a Washington Post op-ed, Tina Front and myself, that I'm happy to share. And then the Washington Post editorial board did come out a couple weeks ago against the bill. So that was exciting. Instead, we are all supporting what we are dubbing partial decriminalization. A lot of folks think that this is like black or white, that it's either the very problematic status quo that I think everyone can agree is not helping the issue of prostitution, or full legalization or decriminalization. And what actually a lot of places are doing internationally and what the global dominant policy approach is partial decriminalization. So that's decriminalizing the sale of sex, recognizing like most individuals in the sex trade were first exploited as children, they're trapped there due to criminalization, and that it makes no sense to basically bog them down with criminal records. We need to be affording them services and interventions, but maintaining the legal prohibitions against all of those other exploitative actors that we talked about. I think our concerns are what we're seeing in places like Nevada, like Amsterdam, like Germany, New Zealand, and elsewhere, where when you decriminalize the sale of sex and the purchase of sex, it drives up demand. There have been studies as recent as 2018 that have looked at over 8,000 men in the United States, that up to 20% of them say if the conditions were right and it was decriminalized, they would enter the market. And just realizing that still millions of men, right? And lots of marginalized women and girls that would be required to service them. And so that's where trafficking comes into play. These issues are inextricably linked. There's no way to really affect policy change in the area of prostitution without impacting trafficking. So again, happy to answer any questions about this, but it's something that people keep saying like it's not going to happen, but this is the second time the bill's been introduced and it's gotten a lot farther with more co-sponsors. So we would just caution folks again not to think that this is not going to go anywhere. We're seeing it, and we're seeing even presidential candidates being forced to take positions on sex work. I don't know if you guys are paying attention to that, but it's happening.
Why are the current council members supporting this?
Why are they?
Why?
So basically the argument is that these are consenting adults, like there's people arguing, and there's a very robust and diverse coalition of organizations supporting the legislation, I will say. ACLU DC, Women Walker, all the LGBT organizations predominantly, HIPS, BYP 100, a lot of people just under the guise of decriminalization, because interactions with police is harmful, and we get that. Again, we do a lot of work around those issues. And then a lot of folks just saying like this is like marijuana, like we should not be involved in the affairs of consenting adults, and this deals with adults. But the reality is kids are always caught up, and the fact is that people are assuming that the sex trade is comprised of children who are trafficked and then people over the age of 18 who are consenting, and that's just not the case. We work with a number, I'd say dozens of young people who are over the age of 18, typically up to age 24, 25, who are still being exploited, and this bill would abandon all of them.
When is the series? October 17th?
Yes.
What time?
10 a.m. It starts 10 a.m. Again, we would encourage folks to testify. We've had a number of ANCs do resolutions against the bill, so like AE recently unanimously supported a resolution. We would encourage commissioners to consider that. We're happy to give you sample language based on some of the other ANCs that are looking at it. I know 6B is also looking at a proposed resolution, but letters, emails, whatever. I think it's really important. We spoke with Councilmember Allen about this. He seemed to understand both sides, but then they noticed the hearing much sooner than we were told. We were told the earliest we could expect one was December, and we're kind of shocked when we were told it was going to be October 17th.
Where's the mayor on this?
We believe that the mayor isn't fully supportive. We haven't had a one-on-one meeting yet. We're in the process of trying to do that, but I will say the mayor has called together a working group that many of us on all sides of the issue are a part of, looking at diversion for adults. So it's clear that she at least understands the vulnerability of individuals who are being bought and sold into sex trade. So that's something we're looking at with a number of folks on all sides of the issue.
Sorry, can you tell me, who was the councilman that introduced the bill? Who was it?
David Grasso. It was originally Grasso and Robert White. They're also the lead introducers this time around, but added Anita Bonds and Brianne Nadeau. And then Charles Allen got on like soon afterwards. So we have 5 of the 13 on the legislation this time around. Even though, you know, again, trafficking is a huge issue, and a lot of those wards, predominantly Ward 1, where we have a lot of gang-related trafficking, you know, 18th Street Los Locos, MS-13. It's an invitation to bring in organized crime and essentially empower them as entrepreneurs.
You get tax dollars from reporting.
I mean,
And
it's been done elsewhere, so.
You said there's a gathering in Fourth, busboys and poets on Fourth and K.
Yes, that's gonna be October 10th. So we're doing a screening of this film that was put together by the DC Sexual Assault Coalition. It's 45 minutes long. It's called Nameless. We are doing a lot of activity on our social media, so you can follow us to see more information on that, but there'll be food, you know, drinks. It's a 45-minute film, and then we'll do a Q&A with the community. We've done a series. We did one in Anacostia. We were doing one tonight in Brookland. This one will be at 4th and K. We'll do another one at U Street.
What time is it?
It's from 6 to 8 p.m. Yeah.
And you're sure it's on the 17th?
The hearing is on October 17th.
The movie.
Oh, the
October
movie will
10th.
be October 10th at 4th and K, Busboys and Poets.
Brooklyn.
No, Brookland is
K.
tonight.
Right.
It's concurrent
Oh.
with this, yeah.
For
The
you-
Busboys and Poets October 10th screening will be at 5th and K.
I just didn't see it on their website or on their events.
Oh, okay.
On that
Well,
date.
Okay, well, it's happening. So
Okay.
we'll get them tweeted. They tweeted out the other thing tonight in Brooklyn, so.
The name of the film is called
Nameless.
Nameless.
Yeah, and it's short, but it's really just featuring the voices of survivors as well as a lot of the providers that work with youth directly in DC. And I'm happy to send any materials, fact sheets.
Yeah, if you could
know,
send some materials,
research, any of that,
that'd be
yeah.
great.
Absolutely.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah, Commissioner Padre.
October 10th starts at 6 p.m.
I think that this is an important enough issue for our community because we, over the decades, have had major issues with prostitution problems. Everybody obviously talks about, you know, the showgirls on 12th Street. If you've ever, you know, driven home late in the evenings, early in the mornings, you know, they're out there plying their trade until the wee hours. You know, the transsexual prostitution issues, you know, along K Street, you know, 5th and K, et cetera, you know, have been notorious. You know, I think it's important that we take a position on this and that we let our council member know that we are in opposition, you know, to this legislation that he's endorsed, you know, by becoming a co-sponsor and accelerating a hearing on. So I'd actually like to go ahead and move that ANC 6C send a letter to the Council of the District of Columbia and the mayor expressing our opposition to this piece of legislation and urging that it not be given a hearing, you know, this month, and that there should be, you know, much more community outreach, you know, and discussion before something like this is
And that's certainly something we have been pushing because we feel like the legislation as drafted just does not arise to the level of warranting a hearing. There's no resources, as I mentioned. One of the other things that we've been calling for as part of a partial decriminalization move is like, you know, vacating the crimes and convictions of people in the sex trade, allowing them meaningful opportunities to exit, providing job opportunities, expanding things like Project Empower and other opportunities for trans women. One of the things that we consistently hear from trans women of color who are in the sex trade is that they're doing this to survive because they cannot get jobs in the mainstream economy. And that's not, you know, a good enough reason. I think that's a real failure on the part of our community in providing jobs and the need to really just combat that discrimination. So there's lots of issues involved, but I think just a straight repeal of a bunch of laws is not the way to go about it. And then it's very much putting the cart before the horse. So it repeals a bunch of laws and then sets up a commission to look at the situation. So it's just the way it's drafted is really concerning. and problematic, and certainly did not take into consideration the voices of a number of survivors of trafficking here who are being exploited.
So you got a motion on the floor, I'd like to be a second on that motion.
Yeah, I just, I think that if the motion itself is requesting that the hearing be canceled or pushed back, I mean, I could absolutely get behind that. I am curious though, because, I value the council member's opinion very much, and as well as the co-sponsors, and I am surprised. And I would like to, I guess, do a little more digging as to why, because the way this bill is being described, it certainly,
Not that.
it doesn't sound like a good idea.
Just look at the
except if you
title,
look
it's meant to be deceptive.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you'd think that if you were going to go along with that, you'd want some accompanying laws that would help support and protect these individuals.
Right.
Um,
And I think, early on, it was modeled after New Zealand, which is one of the only other countries that has decriminalized prostitution. And I think people are really hung up on the semantic difference between legalization and decriminalization, but decriminalization is worse. There's no government oversight, there's no inspection, there's no regulations. And what we're concerned about is, there's no other industry that is widely recognized as violent and harmful, where you would argue that to make it safer, you need to repeal all the regulations. So I
Right,
think
right.
that's really concerning. A lot of data has come out from the New Zealand government that has shown, law enforcement have not been able to identify children who are exploited in these makeshift brothels. They don't have any right of entry. Even if they do, there's no requirement to provide age verification documents. The legislation introduced in DC would also repeal the notion of these makeshift brothels as a public nuisance, which is another angle that law enforcement used to be able to access them. So really, it's just, that was the provision that was most concerning to the youth we work with. They immediately made the connection between that and more DC missing girls. They immediately were like, this is just going to lead to more missing girls. So that was a concern.
Is the bill, the way she describes it, accurate?
My point is exactly this, that the point is you should hear both sides. She listed a whole list of advocates for it, who you also respect their interests and opinions. You've got until after your next meeting, you have another meeting before that hearing. And that hearing is scheduled and it's gonna happen.
The hearing is
October
October 17th.
Yeah.
Okay, the point of a hearing is to do just that, to hear the issues, to have the bill refined if that's there. I mean, it is not a bill because a hearing is held. It is a proposed approach, and it invites everybody to come and say what's wrong with it, including her and others. So I would say, I would not take a position, I mean, I can't tell you what to do, until you have clearly understood the issue. from
Well,
both
I mean, I will
sides.
I mean, the way I think Commissioner Padro explained the motion, it seems to me that, I mean, don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like, one, we might be moving a little too quickly with the hearing. We might want that pushed back a little bit. And two, it sounds like the idea of this bill, whether it's in its final form, is deficient.
It's not his final.
Right, so I think, the way it was described, I think, we could probably have a motion that asks, one, that they push back the hearing and outlines the deficiencies the way the bill stands. Is that accurate?
Well, my motion was, two parts. One, to express our opposition to the legislation as currently proposed.
Okay.
And then number
Which you have
two.
not read.
Oh, I have read it.
You've read.
I have actually met with the ANC Rainbow Coalition, which is split on the issue because they understand that the impact on the neighborhoods. It's not just human rights issue. It's a neighborhood issue.
But that's it.
And so
I
they
mean, the
didn't take
point
it.
is, you may have, but the board being asked to vote on something they haven't read. They've heard one set of arguments, which is encouraged for people to say exactly why they're opposed to various aspects. But that's one voice. And there are a lot of other voices, and that's the intent of the hearing, to have all those voices publicly state, to have all those council members who are signed on to hear the public, their constituents as well as everybody else's. And so I think it's premature to vote against something when you don't know exactly what it is.
When was the hearing announced?
It wasn't even like publicly announced. Like we had,
When,
like a week ago.
Okay.
So
So
it
like
It
it
was
was within
rushed and it was
October.
quietly noticed, I will say that. was
Or
quietly
within
noticed.
September.
We've never formally heard from the council member's office that it was noticed, we saw it ourselves.
Okay.
So Naomi, clearly representing Charles.
Of course.
If we, per Alex, request that the hearing be postponed, would he take that seriously or would he
I
not care?
have no idea. I think a earlier issue needs to be raised. I mean, it may be that you want him to respond himself as your council member directly to the issues and concerns.
Well, that's the request, but would he postpone, do you think he would?
Well, you don't need to postpone it for him to do that. He can do that.
Well, we're kind of, we're not gonna meet before October 17th. So
Yeah, I'm
if the way the bill is described
So
is
it's not-
inaccurate,
But you can appoint somebody from the commission to appear at the hearing.
sure, and so could anybody, but it just seems to me that, on the face and the way that Commissioner Padro and Ms. was
Yeah, and I'm an attorney, like, I am not
Yeah,
misrepresenting.
No,
whatsoever,
yeah, we're
so,
not saying that,
Yeah, I stand by that.
I think, is there anybody else on the commission that has a real concern over Commissioner Padro's? Because, I'd rather,
Yeah, so Councilman Allen has a meet and greet Friday,
This coming Friday.
it's coming Friday
At,
at Compass.
Compass.
Which one, at Seventh Street?
Right there on 7th.
On Seventh Street,
Next to-
okay,
Next to Bradford City.
right, so,
If any of you.
It's
would
8
like
o'clock,
to
right?
come, 8 to 9:30.
yeah,
would
so
like to come,
I'm going to
and
go
talk with
attend
them.
and, yeah.
well, we have a,
I understand, Mr.
A little question. Charles could have scheduled the hearing and not co-signed on to the bill, right?
No.
And you certainly could have chosen not to accelerate the hearing, which is very
well, this is
troubling.
going before judiciary, right?
Right.
It
Yeah,
is.
So he
so
hasn't,
He
yeah.
doesn't even have to have a hearing.
Yeah, all right.
He's
but he had
chosen
to
do that.
co-sign it if he was gonna
Please,
schedule it?
The judiciary, is a committee, and it's made up of a number of council members. If an issue is introduced to the council as a whole, the chairman then assigns it to one of the committees. The committee then meets, considers all the
Or
constituents.
chooses never to have a hearing, happens all the time.
Excuse me, and they take a vote on it. The hearing is necessary for it to go back to the council as a whole, to be voted upon before it becomes legislation.
But my question was, did Charles have to co-sponsor it to schedule a hearing on it?
Would you support this
He's
bill?
the
if they have
chairman of the
regulations?
committee.
No,
So-
he does not have.
that's the whole point.
Yeah,
He's a
and that I think
chairman.
that's what the concern is,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's accelerating.
Legalization.
Yeah.
Because he co-signed
All
on it.
right, does anybody have any concerns, anybody like looking to vote no, or?
Yeah, but he
want-
didn't
want
have to
something split?
co-sign it. He
I
could have
want to
scheduled
visit
a
and
hearing
ask to postpone it.
because he's
Like
chairman
Alex
of that
said.
committee.
Right,
but he didn't have to
this
co-sign
seems
it.
to postpone it and we're against it.
He can't put it forward.
You're fine, yeah, we're all,
If he's not
all right.
Wait,
representing.
If this is,
Charles Allen, or should we?
well, all right, here's, here's the thing is, we can do that, I think the majority of the commission's gone one way, so we don't need to labor over this for another 10 minutes, but, I think it's easier, we could, if they postpone, if Councilmember Allen postpones it to November, we can revisit this issue and then change our whole, our vote around.
They decriminalize
So-
marijuana, that's what
Yeah.
happened.
So, would you feel comfortable if we divided the vote in two, we vote to postpone and then vote to against the bill?
Yes, I'll be fine
Alright.
with that.
I'd like to vote on the motions made and second.
Okay, all right, so all in favor of
Could you Alex repeat your motion, please?
Yeah, yes, that ANC 6C, communicate to the council and the mayor our opposition to the legislation as currently drafted, and that we request that the public hearing on the draft legislation would be postponed to allow for further public outreach and comment.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
All right, so we got one abstention, the rest in favor. And if it's postponed, we can revisit it and reverse our vote in November. Well, if it is, if not, I think, concerns have been voiced. All right, now we get to the meat. Oyster.
Oh, you forgot Pepco.
Oh, Pepco, I'm sorry, we're not out of the appetizer yet, guys, sorry.
Oh, wait, let me do my, So just in a matter of transparency, I work for Pepco, so these are two of my coworkers, so there you go.
Don't worry, I'll be.
Recuse myself of information. And I'm gonna go.
Good evening, ANC.
Well, Rochelle, we're not taking a vote. Oh, I was like, shit, it's gonna have to. No. Sorry, go ahead, yeah,
No,
please,
sir.
please.
Going to be very brief. Good evening, everyone. My name is Travoris Culpepper, Public Affairs Manager with Pepco. I'm here with my colleague, Jamal Jordan, and just wanted to give you a brief update on the Capital Grid project. For those who haven't heard about the project, it's one of Pepco's largest infrastructure projects that we've embarked on in a very long time. It involves us essentially upgrading aging infrastructure, increasing the capacity and networking our system. Specifically what that means is that we'll be upgrading 3 substations, 2 of which are in Ward 1 here in DC, 1 in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And then we also plan on, the project does call for us to build a substation just across the street here, the Mount Vernon substation, to increase the capacity of the area, and then connecting that with the 10-mile transmission line that will actually come through this area as well. At this point in time, the project first phase has been approved by the Public Service Commission, and that first phase does include the 10-mile transmission line and 2 of the substations that are in Ward 1 that we plan on upgrading. The second phase, the commission will be looking at solely the Mount Vernon substation, and they hope to render a decision sometime this fall. We anticipated with the first phase that, sorry about that. We anticipated with the first phase of the project that the Public Service Commission would hold public hearings. They didn't do that, and then to their discretion, we've had about 200 meetings since 2016, and we do plan on having more community meetings specifically in this area, but we are anticipating for public meetings, and we'll make sure to update the commission if we know when those hearings will be. We don't have any advanced knowledge. We have inquired, but we're just pretty much waiting to hear if they decide to do so or not. But we are going to have, you'll see us in the area having, continuing our public meetings. We're going to be meeting with the Golden Rule Plaza on October 17th, as well, October 7th, as well as the Base Area Civic Association, and we'll be meeting in the area as well. But part of this project, we will be looking, we will have a community advisory group specifically for the construction of the Mount Vernon substation. We're looking for people to serve on that group. And it's more so looking for stakeholders within the area. So we'll be soliciting you and asking if there are any folks that will be interested in being a part of that. Definitely taking direction from the commission. But the construction of the transmission line is expected to start sometime next year. We don't have a detailed schedule right now at this time. We haven't selected a contractor for the transmission work, but once that contractor is selected, we will be making sure that folks will know when the construction will actually take place and what that schedule and time will look like. We're also coordinating with DDOT. We understand there are a lot of capital improvement projects and public space projects in the area, and so we are continuing to coordinate with them on that, as well as other utilities in the area. And at that time, I'll just pause and take any questions that you may have.
All right, well, thank you so much, I appreciate your time for coming and giving us the update.
No problem, and I will provide my cards on the table. If you guys have any further questions, you can contact me directly on cell phone or email. But we do have a project email and phone number on the back, which we're encouraging folks to really utilize. Once the project construction starts, we'll be monitoring all emails and calls and trying to make sure that we provide 24 to 48-hour return on those emails and calls. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
October.
Oyster.
Yes,
Commissioner Padro.
This application is for a new restaurant, alcoholic beverage license in my single district. This is a city market at O. in a space that was originally going to be the Bacaro Wine Bar, but has never been occupied since it was constructed. So we're glad to see Chef Rob Rilla, formerly of Hazel, coming back to the neighborhood again. For full disclosure, it was one of my favorite restaurants in the neighborhood. And I'm glad to have his food coming back half a block from my house. But nonetheless, the ABC Licensing Committee did meet and has no concerns about this particular application. They do have a summer garden, but they have voluntarily agreed to have hours of alcohol service in the summer garden area, which is actually closed by one of the passageways between the sidewalk and the garage space at City Market. So there really would be very little noise impact, but as I mentioned, they've agreed to end service at midnight. And there don't seem to be any negative potential impacts, but nonetheless, will allow the applicant to make their case.
Sure, thanks for being here. My name is Matt Menora. I'm a law firm of Mallory O'Brien. We're ABC License Counsel for Future LLC, trading as Oyster. I don't want to repeat too much of what Commissioner Padra said, but as he did mention, the summer garden hours end at midnight daily, and it's pretty much entirely enclosed, save for just an entranceway. So because summer garden technically, it's really more like an enclosed space, so the idea of sound mitigation is not even necessary because it's really not much sound or vibration that could get out. The interior hours end at midnight during the week and 1 a.m. on the weekends. We're looking at 40 seats on the inside, 25 seats on the summer garden, and a total occupancy load of only 80. That's seating plus standing. I'm joined by Chef Rob Ruba, who is the executive chef for Oyster, who could just describe a bit more about the concept, and then if there are other questions, we'll be happy to address them.
Yeah, hello. Concept of the restaurant is primarily plant-based as well with oysters. Main goal is sustainability, bringing a stronger sense of what the impacts of a restaurant are to the environment and the community and reducing that. I think we have the right size footprint to really do a good test model of this. And yeah, that's the short stick of it.
Oh, Commissioner Padra, we did find out they are going to be validating parking.
Thank you for confirming that. So this is in my single member district, as I stated, and I'm pleased to make a motion to have ANC 6E support both permanent and stipulated licenses for Oyster at 1440 8th Street Northwest, again, 1448th Street Northwest, and we communicate that support to the ABC board and
Second by Commissioner Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to move through these quick because we're running low on time, but we got 1201 4th Street. Request.
Oh, hooray. Hi. This is the very briefest public space request ever.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. So this is my single member district, a very small request dealing with public space, accessing the sidewalk to bring in material, right?
Yes.
Shut my mouth, you do this other description. I think it's the first time I've ever voted on something like this.
So I represent the owner, the owner's agent, and a rep.
You want to state your name first?
Sure. My name is Nika Shelton, and I got 6 copies.
I don't need one, I got.
Okay. Anika Shelton, and I represent, thank you. I represent the owner's agent. The owner is converting a single-family townhome to a 2-family flat. Due to his converting it to 2-family flat, meeting code, the second unit, which is the basement unit, there's a bedroom. So the bedroom has means of egress, meaning there's a window, but the window well has to also meet code to meet means of egress. So as most of you know, I'm sure, the land in DC is owned by DC, even though they own the building, the owner owns the building. We have to apply for a public space permit so that we can extend the existing window well. So if you look on the last sheet, it shows the dimensions for the window well. I'm just reading, we're applying for a public space permit to meet code.
Any concerns from the commissioners?
None from me.
And Alex, you said you guys didn't have time, right?
We didn't have time to consider it.
Okay. All right, any concerns from the community? All right, so I move that 6E support the request for the public space permit for 1201 4th Street Northwest.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All set, thank you very much.
Thank you for
Yeah.
coming.
That was
Thank you
quick.
so much.
All right, friends of Holland tonight.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for your time this evening. My name is Troy Balcom. I'm actually with Quadrangle Development. We are owners and developers of the property at 811 3rd Street, which is just to the north of the existing APAC office building. 251, I believe it's either 8 or Mass Avenue. And just south of the existing Montgomery Baptist Church. I'll make this brief. I know we are short on time. This is just a brief project update as well as one request with regards to our traffic control plan. The project, if all goes well, we hope to start construction by the end of the calendar year. This is a 275 market rate unit apartment building covering 9 stories. We're doing it as a matter of right under the MU6 zone. It currently provides 2 levels of below-grade parking with 88 spaces. It also includes 39 surface spaces for the Mount Carmel Baptist Church, as there are partners in the development. Our sister project at Liberty Place, which is directly to the north and directly abutting us, they are developing 71 affordable housing units currently under construction at the corner of 3rd and I. I included a few images of what the building's going to look like. We're currently going through the permitting process. We're at the tail end of that. So if you know where the site is, on 3rd Street between H and I on the east side, it abuts the I-395 tunnel and the parking deck that is being considered for some form of redevelopment or park use. I'm not exactly sure where that's going, but regardless, we're excited about this project. We think it'll be a great addition to the neighborhood. It'll start to fill out 3rd Street and make it feel as more integrated with the rest of the neighborhood. My request